Hi, and welcome to the channel. My name is Lindsay from Sweet and Sour Firsties. If you're new here, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe for tons of weekly tips during this back-to-school season to make it your best school year ever. For this week's video, we're actually going to do a 3-part series all about classroom setup and organization. This week is all about classroom setup tips and hacks. I'm going to teach you about all the tools you need to get your classroom set up and organized in a breeze. To start this week, I'm going to share about some of my favorite must-have tools when I'm getting ready to set up the classroom. Let's start with my first favorite, hot glue gun. When I am putting anything up that's going to stay there for the whole year, think about alphabet posters, think about number line, whatever it is that you're going to have up all year long, hot glue has been the #1 tool that I have seen works better than any other tool. This year, I'm super excited too. I actually found a cordless hot glue gun. I got burned pretty bad last year and running with the hot glue gun from the cord to try to get it on the wall. And so instead of having that problem again, try cordless. This next tool may seem like a given, but if I am not hot gluing it to the wall, I am stapling it to bulletin boards or wherever it needs to be attached to. The stapler I found is a great tool, and honestly, I have just a cheap one, but it mostly does the job pretty well. Now, here's a trick with your staples. If you don't like looking at the bright staples on your bulletin boards, you can always color them black so that they're harder to see and show up. Just a permanent marker works pretty well for this little hack. Another tool I love for bulletin boards are clothespins. Clothespins are a great way to hold up any student work that you have. I have attached with staples a piece of colored Asher Bright paper, and all I've done is slip a clothespin behind it. Now, this can stay up all year and turn into a beautiful bulletin board that displays student work. But in the meantime, during those first weeks of school when you don't have anything yet, you can easily put up this amazing work coming soon sign. You have a beautiful bulletin board for back to school. And when your families walk in for the first time, they'll see that your bulletin boards aren't empty. And the best part about this is you can grab this amazing work sign for free below. If you're working on a harder bulletin board with letters that you want to line up perfectly, I always use blue painter's tape. I like blue painter's tape because it doesn't stick as much as other kinds of tape. And if you saw me post about this on Instagram, all you do is lay all of your letters out on the floor in front of you. And I will warn you, please make sure that your letters are laminated or the tape will get stuck to them. Once you have your letters laminated, lay them all out on the floor, exactly how you want them to be on the bulletin board. All you have to do is run a light piece of this along the letters, exactly how you want them. Again, I said lightly lay it, so you just want to carefully place it down on the letters. And then you can lift up the letters, stick it on your bulletin board. The tape will adhere to your bulletin board, and all you have to do is staple each of the letters and peel off the tape lightly. Your letters will be perfectly lined up and centered. This blue tape is a must-have tool when setting up bulletin boards. Some more must-have tools for bulletin boards. You may have seen me share about these before. I love this guy. It's super easy to pull out all of your staples. So if you're getting ready to change your bulletin board and you don't want to rip anything, I recommend these tools as well as this guy. I don't know about you guys, but I make a huge mess when I set up bulletin boards or take bulletin boards down. This easily picks up all of the staples without leaving them all over the ground so someone can get hurt or you having to pick them up by hand, which is a big deal. I've also been trying to share about these sheets. These are my go-to sheets when I'm hanging up anything that, again, stays on display. So these are matte laminating sheets. They reduce the glare. You may have seen me post about spraying with that matte spray. You don't need to do that anymore. These are way better. Now, again, you heard me say I use these for things that I display. These cannot be written on and erased. You can. I did it last year. It was a pain. So I recommend this only for things that are displayed. Again, thinking that number line, thinking those pieces that stay up all year, your calendar pieces, but you don't write on. It reduces the glare. You can see it so much better than the regular laminating sheets. And again, it's better than spraying with that spray. And the last tool I want to share about, this one specifically for your whiteboards. So this is magnetic tape. It works just like regular tape. All you have to do is get the size of the piece you want and cut it just like regular tape. Again, magnetic tape. It adheres really well to anything that you want to stick on the whiteboard. You can add it to your daily schedule, and say it changes around, you can easily move the pieces around with this magnetic tape because you just peel it off, put it where you want it. We display our voice level posters with these, and I have a little arrow that I can move up and down to the different voice levels that I want students to be working at. And again, with the magnetic tape, it's super easy to stick and move that arrow wherever we need to when we're working. All right, those are my go-to tools when I'm getting ready to set up for the classroom. I will tell you one more tool that I always recommend that can't be found in a store is a friend. I always recommend having a buddy to work with you when you're getting ready to set up the classroom. They can help you make sure things are lined up. They can help you if you have to hang a really big paper. So if you can gather a friend to help during classroom setup, that is another must-have tool that I recommend. Now that we have talked about all of my favorite tools, let's get into some of my favorite classroom setup hacks to make that a breeze. Let's start with this hack. All right, how many times are you getting ready to hang different pages together and you start at one end and quickly find out it's not lined up or they're not in the middle, you name it, been there, had that struggle. Here's something that I learned that has been really helpful when you're hanging different pages together, like for example, your alphabet posters. When you're getting ready to hang any set of pages, numbers, posters, whatever it is, I start in the middle of the board with the middle page. So I literally lay every single page out, whatever it is that I'm hanging, and I count. Let's say we're doing the alphabet. We're getting ready to hang it on the wall. We're getting ready to hang it up above a bulletin board on a wall. I'm going to look where the middle of the wall is. I'm going to line up each of the pages. So we have 26 pages, right? I start at both ends and I count in until I get to the middle of the pages. And the middle of the pages is exactly where I start on the middle of the bulletin board, and I work my way out. So for example, if we're talking about the alphabet posters, M, N is right in the middle. So that's where I'm gonna start with M and N right in the middle and work my way out. By doing that, I can make sure they're all lined up exactly how I want them. I can also make sure that they're not uneven with more on one side than another. This has saved a lot of time, a lot of redoing. It's awful, right? And so this hack, simple but super effective when you're hanging, again, those sets of posters that you want to make sure are aligned and even. For the next hack, you're going to use that blue tape again. Remember how we talked about laying the letters down and taping in the middle? I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's say you're trying to make a heading. Maybe you want a reading bulletin board, math bulletin board. I'm going to show you how to get those letters lined up correctly and put in the middle of the bulletin board. Let's quickly talk bulletin boards for a minute. And I've already talked a lot about some bulletin board hacks. There's a couple more I want to share with you. One of my favorite things to use for bulletin boards is better than paper. So this is better than paper. The reason why I like it is because it lasts a really long time. You can't really see any of the holes in there from the staples. So even if you take things out and put them back in again, it can be reused over and over again and for a long time. And they have all different rolls and different kinds that you can get. Some other things I love using for bulletin boards are, of course, paper if you have access to it, which is great, but again, can rip and has holes in it. Tablecloths also work really well. And let's say your room doesn't come with enough bulletin boards, you can easily create your own. You can use whatever kind of paper you want. You can just staple it on a wall and then put a border around it and you have your very own interactive bulletin board. You can use this for student interactive bulletin boards. Maybe you have a sound wall you want students to be able to access. Maybe you want to start Student of the Week bulletin board, whatever they are. You don't have to worry if you don't have enough in your room. You can create your own literally with paper and border. That's it. If you're like me and you've had to get creative with bulletin boards and whiteboards, here's another tip that is really helpful for your anchor charts. So it's always hard to figure out, do you want to store them? Do you want to create new ones each year? It's always hard to figure out what you want to do with those anchor charts. One way to keep and display anchor charts so that students can access them is by using a magnetic rod and binder rings. You can hole punch the edges of your anchor chart page and you can put a binder ring through them and keep it on the whiteboard. In a classroom of mine, where as it turned out, I didn't have a lot of whiteboard space, and so I had to get creative. And so I had 3 of these set up where you can see the magnetic rod and the binder rings were holding the anchor charts there. And so I could hang them all up there. Students could flip through them as they needed to. We could take them down for them to look at. But it was a really creative solution for when I had a bunch of whiteboards and not a ton of bulletin boards. And speaking of those anchor charts, have you ever tried traceable anchor charts? Now, I know some of the newer boards today are a little bit wonkier, but if you have an option to freeze a setting on your board, you can trace an anchor chart. I like to create the shell of the chart, laminate that so that can be used every year, and we can still put Post-it notes on top of it, write on top of it with markers, but then I have it again for next year so I don't have to recreate it again. Here is an example of an anchor chart that I traced. What's nice about traceable anchor charts is you can trace as little or as much as you want, but take a look. The rest of the chart is blank so that students can still write on it, or we can put Post-it notes on it, whatever we need, and it can be rolled up and used year after year. The last setup hack I want to share about is to use number labels instead of names when you're labeling your classroom. For many years, I use names, and we know you have to remove the names every year, put new names on them for the students that change. They come in the middle of the year or leave, you have to change those out. So instead, when I switch to using numbers, I can print, laminate these once, add it to cubbies, add it to book bins, whatever it is that needs to be labeled with students' possessions. They know it's theirs, they get their number, but then we're not replacing it every single year. Number labels is where it's at. I also love to use numbers throughout the day, throughout the year in the classroom with students. Numbers 10 through 12 line up first. Numbers 1 to 5, you can clean up whatever it is. They know their number, they can get in line order their number. If they're lining up, whatever it is, it makes it super easy and they love it too. I hope you enjoyed this week's video all about my favorite classroom setup hacks and tips. Join us for part 2 in the series. We're gonna talk more about classroom setup, ideas, tips, whatever you need to get started. As always, if you have questions or comments, let us know down below in the comments. I will link all of these tools I've mentioned, as well as some helpful blog posts to get you started. And if you haven't, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe for tons of weekly back to school tips during the back to school season to make this your best school year ever. I hope you enjoyed watching. Join us for the next video in this series. See you soon.